what do we need to do in order to start to mirror our own desires and wishes and beliefs about ourselves.
How many clients we're having, how we go about
really making a shift in the way you are being.
Life is a game, and you choose the game you play in it. Welcome to the Art of Living podcast, creating games worth playing. That's the theme of the podcast, and it's hosted by the Art of Living Academy, where we're empowering entrepreneurs to create games worth playing and master the art of living. And today I'm joined by Matan Levkowich, who is an incredible guest to have on a podcast. I just went through his website, read some of his articles, and Matan and I, we met a couple of years ago. And already back then, I loved what you were up to. And I loved the explorations we had together. I remember we being in a park and doing some Brazilian jiu-jitsu back then. And since then, there's a lot that has been happening for you and for me. And when the idea came along to interview people who are creating their own business in a way that maybe is a bit outside of the norm, like really going for their passion, really going for what they want to bring to the world, I came across you by posting a question on Facebook, and somebody connected us back. And you said, "Oh, I know Moritz." And I said, "Oh, I know Matan." And then you shared a bit of your journey, and I thought it would be really worthwhile sharing that journey with other people to be inspired, to get some distinctions they might not have when they're in their own world of business and trying to make it, or trying to put their foot on the ground in creating some income with the things that they actually like to do and love to do. And I think you're an incredible example of that. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's pretty exciting to imagine that as a dancer, I'm being invited to talk about the business world. So that's already some achievement from my side that I'm happy to be welcome in that context. Thank you for the invitation, Moritz.
You're so welcome. And like just what you said, maybe we're going to touch on that. I just want to mention it briefly. A lot of industries have like an already assumption about how it is in the industry. And I think one of the already assumption in the art industry and the dance industry is you're not going to be able to create a business out of it. Like you're not going to be successful with that work. And I think you're proving some of the assumptions wrong within that context. So
yeah, it's definitely very much ingrained in the dance culture. You know, when I studied dance back then in Salzburg, kind of 14 years ago, I remember that the mentality was that you should always be extremely grateful if you just get an opportunity to even participate in something, not talking about earning money. So then if you get a job, then you are one of the luckiest person on planet Earth that managed to get a job from dance. So the mentality is already a scarcity mentality. That's like you cannot, like you should be grateful for whatever you get, which, you know, there is beautiful aspect about being grateful, but I don't think that it's very healthy to be so skeptical about the ability to make a living from something that you are very connected in your heart. So that's definitely something I'm happy that I've managed to came to arrive to a different perspective. Sure.
So to give a bit more context about where you come from and to take people on your journey, I thought we start out with a bit of what's your story. You just mentioned dancing, and it's a context that we both share. Like we both came from the world of dance and movement. And I know today you're running movement labs in Vienna, which is a training where 90 people per year participate to be trained by what you develop and by what you develop together with other people. So last time I saw you, we were doing BJJ in the park. Today when I spoke to you, you're running a business, having a couple of people working with you, and having over 90 people a year running through your trainings. So maybe you want to start even a bit before I met you, because I don't know much about your before days, and take us a bit on your journey of creating that business, and also how you develop, because I know has been a lot of personal transformation along the way.
Yeah, I grew up as a basketball player in my childhood. That's something that I've been kind of sent by my parents in early age. So I kind of had this upbringing that physicality and sport and achievement was somehow connected to my childhood. But I was never that of a talented basketball player. So very early, I realized like that, despite the fact that I like it, it's not something that I will be able to actually do professionally. And then also in my adolescence, I developed a certain, let's say, kind of a rebel mindset, and I was not really taking the trainings too seriously. And it was clear that, okay, that's not going to be my direction. And at the age of 18, like everybody else in my country, I went I joined the military for 3 years, which had a severe impact on my personality, and how I see the world. Let's say like a lot of naiveties that I had kind of shattered. And coming out of the army, I felt to some extent that like something is definitely need to be looked inside. What is like to process all the experiences that I had. And it led me into a journey into the world of Vipassana meditation. And I started to meditate and serve in meditation centers. And that kind of journey led me to live in South Africa for a while. And during that time, I was really just diving into my internal world and observing the tendencies of my mind and learning how my mind behaves. And in that process, which maybe in retrospective, I can say it was kind of my first passion, like, which is a bit contradictory when you think about the practice of meditation. And I really dive into that obsessively. And in my mind, I already thought, okay, that's it. I figured out what I'm going to do in my life. I'm just going to be living in meditation center and serving courses, and that's it. I have no materialistic aspiration. I don't want to create anything in the world. I just want to observe my mind and free myself from the worldly suffering, which again had a certain contradiction, because I came to this whole process from a very individualistic perspective of like, what do I want to do, which is a little bit, it has a certain contradictory element to it. But then after a certain period of time there in South Africa, I realized that like my body told me, hey, look, you cannot ignore me. In that context, it was really specifically due to sexuality, because in the meditation center, I was also practicing sexual celibacy. So in my body, I was very young, full of hormones. My body told me, hey, what are you doing? This really radical choice of not expressing yourself sexually was not really working. And then eventually, when I came back to my home country, I realized that, okay, something is missing in my life radically, and that was a connection to the body. And while this happened, I also started to work in the tech industry. I had some friends that were working in a tech company, and I had like good intuition to technology, and I got myself to work in the tech industry and started to develop a career there. I was very motivated to develop myself in the company, but alongside me kind of becoming more established in that universe, I discovered dance, and I discovered working with my body. And it had such a profound impact that after 2 years of studying dance in quite a naive way, like I joined the different workshop, and I went and I took education in a school for amateurs where I got in touch with contemporary dance, contact improvisation, and other disciplines. And I realized, okay, look, I cannot be satisfied by doing something that is purely materialistic. And that was the company that I worked with in the tech company. We were doing stuff around electronic trading. So we were basically like moving money from one bank account to another. And so again, this kind of meeting really radical differences from the Vipassana into the world that was super materialistic. But at the same time, developing this kind of connection to the body and realizing, hey, if I want to understand my mind, I need to also understand my body. That was kind of a certain realization. And that led me to start studying dance and eventually to take dance education very seriously. I moved to Austria, where I live right now, and I studied in Salzburg in an academy called Salzburg Experimental Academy of Dance. And after finishing and graduating from there, I just arrived into the chaotic, competitive dance world. And I started to do my career as a freelance dancer, choreographer. And I was always very much connected to teaching. So I always had the intuition that I need to bring something back to people. I need to share my practice. But for many years, I walked around with a big sense of lack of recognition and lack of satisfaction from how much I know and how much time I invested in my craft and what am I getting back in return. Mostly, I would say, like financially, life was very unstable. And just for the context, I'm married, I have kids. So like with the growing up of my kids, I really felt that, okay, this lifestyle of like having to chase after work and constantly feeling very stressed, like, okay, would there be more seminars? Would people sign up for my workshop, etc.? I felt like really draining and unsustainable. And then by a chance, I came across a certain online webinar for marketing with a certain marketing expert from Israel. And I said, okay, I'm going to join this thing. I was curious about it. You know, he had all the right trigger points for me to sign up for the webinar, to show up there. And after the webinar, I realized, hey, like I want to do something completely different. I want to build a business. I want to do something that will be sustainable around what I know. And initially I had the idea that I'm going to create some kind of a online academy where I will help people to go through a process of connecting to their body. And I thought, okay, I'm going to build some online course and that will be my model, which was very similar to the business model of the marketing expert I studied with. And that business model didn't work for me. And after investing many hours in creating content and marketing it, I've managed maybe to sell this course for like 3 people who were in my organic mailing list. And it was like completely collapsing. And I got to the point that I thought, wow, I really don't know what to do with my life. I was in this kind of moment of a crisis. And that crisis was not separated, I would say, from a certain identity crisis, because I was so much identifying with my role as a dancer and as a dance teacher that I couldn't see anything clear in that time. And then, thank God, when you go really deep into despair, sometimes you find something. and what I found, I just realized that, okay, in order to just stay optimistic, I need to do something that I know I'm good at. Because everything I tried around the creation of a new business model failed miserably. So I said, okay, I'm just going to offer weekly classes in Vienna, which at that point felt for me like really like, okay, I've already been teaching workshops in Europe and in the US and in Asia. And it felt for me a bit like, I'm really kind of, instead of progressing, I go backwards with my career. Like now I'm just teaching an open class in Vienna after doing all these, let's say, important workshops. And I didn't know who would come. And when I made a tryout class, many people came. I had like 60 people coming to a tryout class in dance in Vienna. And that was a feeling of, oh my God, like actually people are interested in what I do. And then I started to offer weekly training, and I developed a different vision of what I could do in Vienna. And I had the vision to make a gym, a movement training gym that will host different classes and that people could come and train there. And it started to go well. And then Corona took place, and Corona shattered this idea completely, because again, like, it wasn't possible to do anything in person. And also when the regulation in Austria started to loosen up, people didn't come back to the training. People were full of fear. People had a lot of anxiety training and coming to classes. And again, I felt, oh my God, like it's all collapsing again. I went again into kind of a very challenging moment. And I remember telling my wife, yeah, I think that's it. I'm gonna look for a job in Hofer, And she looked at me and she got really pissed. And I'm very thankful for that I'm married to my wife, because she knows how to give me the proper mirrors. And she got really pissed and she told me, do you think that I left my life and kind of sacrificed 3 years of my medical career for you to kind of work in Hofer. Like, get a grip of yourself. And it was kind of a harsh truth, but when you get it from somebody you love, sometimes it kind of gets to the right place. And then one student of mine, and that maybe will relate to the theme that you brought up about how how the illusion of individuality. A student of mine, a woman who had a bit of, let's say, kind of a shamanic qualities, she came and told me, "Hey, Matan, I went to Germany and I made a course in dance in an academy that you teach. And I had a vision that you have to open a dance school in Vienna, because I really want to study more regularly with you. And it will be great if you will just open a program where we can commit a few people with you." And in the beginning, I was quite hesitant, and I thought like, okay, who would want to commit with me? So again, I had a lot of self-doubt, and I asked her if she wants to help me organizing it. And in the beginning, she said, "Yes, I can help you organize it." But then after our first meeting, she told me, "Look, actually, I just want to study with you. I don't want to organize anything, but I promise to be the first student." So then I calculated, I made a little budget, and I said, okay, if I manage to get 8 people and I already have one, I can open a training for 6 months with me and see how it goes. And the moment I put it out there, there was like a tornado of attention around it. And I got the program full super quick, and 30 people came. So way more than the numbers that I anticipated. So instead of opening one group, I had to open like 3 groups. And then we went to this journey for 6 months together with these people who committed to my training. And while it was going on, I started to realize, hey, let's see if this potential is bigger than just people who want to train with me. So I invited another colleague, and we said, let's try to open another study group with a focus on partner work and contact improvisation. And again, we managed to get another 70 people very easily. And then I realized, okay, look, there is like something is happening here. So I went back, contact my mentor from my first dance education, who was a great person called Itai Atuv, who was helping me throughout my career. And he told me, "Look, Matan, what you're doing is something that I've been waiting for many years, that one of my students will initiate, because I think it can really work, because many, many people want to learn dance. Many people want to connect to their bodies. And what you're offering, I have no doubt that there's a huge market of people who will be interested in that." And he just gave me the idea to take a business consulting. And he connected me to a woman who was helping me to set up a business instead of just doing some work. So she helped me to lay out the first foundation of like, how should I transform my mind from being a self-employed person who just have gigs to think like an entrepreneur. And combined with all the knowledge that I had from the marketing course, which was very helpful in everything to do with marketing for the school, we started to build a business. And then in the second year, instead of opening just one program, we already opened 3 programs. And again, everything got full very quickly. And during the year, we opened another 2 programs and invited more teachers. And now we're in the 3rd year that the school is operating. And from the first year that I was just doing all the work by myself, now we have like 8 teachers in the team. We have an administrator manager. I have a videographer that is working with us consistently. And we've been welcoming this year more than 90 students. Around 100 students have passed through our programs. And now we are in the preparation phase, and we already started the application for the 4th year. So it has been quite a meteoric process of growing from one-man show into managing a business. And I would say that even though I feel confident in our ability to continue, I still feel that there's tremendous of things to learn, and there's many universes that have been open. What does it mean to manage people? What does it mean to maintain relationship with students, which on one hand they are my students, but they're also customers? And what does it mean to maintain this tension? What does it mean to be able to stay authentic with your vision while also making it attractive for others? So there's a lot of things to learn, but it's been a beautiful journey, and I'm super happy. And I'm also I would say on one hand, I'm proud because of course I have something to do with it, but at the same time, I also really enjoy that I have this humble beginning. It wasn't even my own vision, It was somebody of my student who told me, hey, Matan, you could do that. So a student of mine had faith in me doing something more for them. And that's exactly the right anchoring that I needed, maybe, like to start everything, not from the perspective of, I have such a great vision and I am doing this great work in the world. But no, it's a very humble beginning. I was in a difficult place in my life, and a student of mine had great faith in me and helped me to push me into the right direction.
Wow. Well, there's so much in what you just shared that we could go into unpacking. And funny enough, like you hit on some of the points I wanted to ask you already. One of the questions that popped up for me was, why didn't you get a job? Now I know. Your wife said, like, no, you don't do that.
I was searching, like, the thing is that, I had the background in the tech industry, and I also learned in an autodidactic way how to build and design websites. So I have some skills that could maybe relate to the current tech environment. And I was looking and I realized, look, I'm kind of half qualified in everything. So I realized, like, even if I want to shift back to this universe, it's almost like the door is a little bit closed. Technically, I would have to study. And so I had a bit of a feeling like if I would really want to take a job, I would have to go back and studying. And that was really not attractive. But I'm very happy that I didn't went that path, and that I committed to the things that I really love and feel that I have something to share with the world.
Yeah. I also note of that. I have a belief. I have a belief that being half good at many things is actually a skill in itself, and a very powerful skill in today's world. Like, I see a lot of people who are artists who never look into the world of marketing, or never look into the world of sales, or never look into the world of leadership. And they are dependent on structures outside of themselves to provide knowledge to them, or to market them, or to give them funding. And in my listening to you, I can see you created a lot of things out of your interest in a lot of things that are nowadays probably helping you. That's my assumption, in leading a school like you have, right? In leading people and the school and marketing it and learning about it, where at the same time, like I can say from my own experience, I'm constantly faced with, I don't know anything. And you get into now recording a podcast, and then you help me set it up for 15 minutes because you had some experience I didn't have and didn't even know how this microphone is working properly, right? So when that doesn't scare you, and that kind of brings me back to the question why you continued, like maybe it did scare you, but there was something that had you continue on your journey, right? Even when you looked at jobs, I can remember I had a moment when Corona hit where I started looking at jobs, but something had me not go there, and then instead double down on, no, I want to get this coaching business off the ground, and contacted people and did a lot of things to make it work, which some of them only worked and a lot of them didn't work. So there is a certain persistence I'm hearing in your story that I'm curious about if you have ever distinguished. What is it that keeps you going in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think that one thing, it has to do with my personality structure, I guess. I'm a very disagreeable person, which also means that I'm okay with competing. So I don't mind to be in a let's say in a mindset of competition, and this is like one thing. And why do I say it? Because I think that there is certain thing that I really kind of ingrained from the dance education, that if you study dance and then you stop dancing, in my mind, and I'm not saying that that's objectively true for everybody, but in my mind, I consider it like a failure, because dance was something that gave me so much and that I invested so much time doing, that I felt like I cannot give up for myself on something that I love so much and then just put it aside. So there is for me a certain kind of internal force to overcome these challenges that has to do, I think, with my personality. But I think that it's also not it's definitely doesn't all reside in my ability to be disciplined and push myself. But I think that I also had positive experiences along the way to affirm, okay, you're on the right path. And I think this is something that is incredibly important because, like you need to do something to some extent that you are capable doing in order to be motivated to keep doing it. If you're only failing all the time, I think it's quite difficult to be motivated long term. So, I had these moments, okay, I made an open class and 60 people came. And that was like, okay, okay, I get this reassurance from the world. Or I did manage to be invited to different festivals and different places. So there is a certain dance, I would say, between your internal confidence and the world that reassures you back. And the interesting question, and in that regard, maybe I cannot answer you, but I can kind of provide another question, is like, what do we need to do in order to start mirror our own desires and wishes and beliefs about ourselves so that the world will answer us back with a positive response to what we want to do? Because again, I had many years that it didn't work, so to speak, or at least something in my mind felt it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's with a lot of effort. And what I can definitely say that changed. So it's again, it's not the cause, but it's a symptom. Now when things are working, I'm not in a struggle anymore. Like things are flowing. So success doesn't come, at least in my case, from really pushing against life, but about listening and sensing, okay, there is something here that I can ride with. No, so it's like I don't know. The image that I have, I like to ride on my surf skate, and you can push uphill and you can move yourself, but the real pleasure is when you roll downhill and then you just glide effortlessly, and you still do the same movements, but one is full of effort and one is like connect to a sense of flow and joy. So this is definitely in my case like to recognize, okay, there is something here. There's somebody is coming to tell me something that I need to learn. And in that case, it was my student and my wife. Like, so I would say maybe now when I'm talking, I'm realizing maybe that's a really important thing, to develop an ability to listen to people who care about you, because we are, as you said, there's more things we don't know than things that we know. And we can alleviate some of our ignorance. It actually funny enough that you bring us to this question, because yesterday when I was thinking about that we will, that I'm coming to be a guest in your podcast, a thought came to me about one very influential writer that died recently, Paul Auster, an American writer. And I read his books when I was in my adolescence years. So his words kind of really influenced. And there is a quote from a book of him that I thought to share that is really fitting to this context. Can I share it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's from a book called Moon Palace, and it goes like this. I came to recognize chance as a form of readiness, a way of saving myself through the minds of others. And I love it because I think, like we are always existing in like life is a big improvisation, and there's so many factors that are beyond our control. But when things comes our way, we can be sensitive to recognize there is somebody here who has the ability to see something that I cannot see. And if I listen carefully, then maybe I will be guided into the right direction. So and again, like so it's definitely that you need some qualities from your own heart and mind. You need to engage, you need to work hard, but you're not alone. It's not happening because you are just doing everything by yourself.
Yeah. You said something before when you finished. You said going out of what I want and what I think and into listening. I think that's a great and very powerful distinction that's probably part of my mission, is to open our brains up to the possibility that all brains are connected and that this life is a connected journey. Like anything I do will affect the space I'm in. There is no separation. If I move, like also on a physical plane, air is being moved and it's going to be reflected in the space, and there's a movement happening. And there is no such thing as an independent movement that would require us to cut us out from life and place somewhere else that is not life, and we don't know anything about life. And when you shared at the end, you said you were actually listening to somebody else than yourself, but you had an openness to receive what they said. And I remember in the practice of dance, and what I believe to observe from you, you're playing with that ability to be open and receptive a lot in your classes and in the movement practices that you do. And I remember you were very interested in that practice back when we met, being open and receptive. And I wonder how that is connected to you being able to lead a team nowadays and work in the business, and also how it helped you to be possibly relaxed and calm and more fluid in all of it while you're taking on more and more responsibility.
So I would say, like, maybe one step backwards. For many years, I was frustrated that I don't have enough followers as a teacher who tours around. And I had several friends who had like a big amount of students who are following them, and they come to every workshop. And I also had a certain fear of having followers, because I felt like, okay, why would I be a better person? And I'm not going to just get corrupt with attention and admiration and just become another false guru for my students. So on one hand, I desired it. On the other hand, I was afraid of that. And I think that one thing that kind of enables me now to do what I do is that I'm not afraid of having committed relationship with people anymore. And maybe it has to do, also with certain processes that has to do with my psychological processes, but also like just relational processes with my family, my responsibility as a father, as a husband. And I think that when it comes to the practice of dance and I think that dance in a way, and that's maybe, I will try to share it in a way that would also be relevant for people who maybe don't dance. But I think that when you practice listening with your body to someone and moving, you can get a very quick reflection on certain principles that would manifest also on a more abstract way, but the body tells it to you very quickly. So for example, if you push me and I push against you, there's immediately a conflict of kinetic energy. So we need to start pushing more if we want to go through that obstacle. On the other hand, if you push me and I yield, I can go with your energy and we can both flow harmoniously in some direction. And, and that kind of, you can take this principle into life and you can see it applicable in many situations. It's just that the body tells it to you very quickly. It doesn't mean that it translates to your mental capabilities to behave like this in the world, but at least you have a certain reference point. Okay, I've experienced that. And then when I think about the creation of the Movement Lab and like building it as a business, I wanted to have like certain checkpoints from the beginning when I designed the structure, and not all these ideas were cognitive, but I work a lot with intuition. But I had the intuition, it cannot be about me. That was the intuition that I had, because the vision wasn't even mine. So it cannot, like, why would I want to design it on me if it wasn't even my vision? So it was clear it cannot be about me. So it has to have other people. And then I started to collect different people to join the project. And I think that one thing that was very informing and positive in my case, I think, is to choose people who have different capabilities. Some are there in the structure to challenge me, and to say, hey, this is really not correct. For example, my administration manager, she keeps pushing me in a positive way. Like, hey, I don't think this is the right way. Hey, here you're not that sensitive. Hey, this could be done better. I have another teacher in the team that also does that. On the other hand, I have another teacher who is an extremely kind and welcoming person. So she kind of gives a bit the opposite attitude that I might have sometimes, that I'm a little bit more sharp and I can cut conversation a bit more quickly. So she kind of balances energetically the space. So for me, it's I feel like that the training that I got in dance that helped me to kind of see this abstract principle were there somewhere in the level of my intuition, and then later they became more and more clearly like, okay, I need to make design choices, and what kind of a structure do I want? And even though that the movement lab is still managing to some extent in a top-down way, because I'm the only one who is working full-time, I do try to delegate responsibilities in order for people to be able to balance the areas that I'm not good at. So for me, this is like really one clear thing about how to run the business, is that there is a limited capacity to what I can do by myself. And that requires a certain trust. And one thing that I also practice a lot through dance is how I can develop physical trust in another person. So how can I give my weight, and knowing that my partner is for a moment holding the responsibility for both of us. And that's another quality that I think that is extremely necessary. And I think that it's very easy to forget it when you make a business because of sense of ownership. You know, like my admin manager just told me in our last meeting a powerful sentence. She told me, yeah, Matan, I think you have to accept that the more the school runs, there are more places that will be free from your from you being important there, because you trust more people. So then, like, they will be the one who is holding the responsibility. They will be the one who are going through a meaningful relationship with the students, and maybe you will just be a little bit in the background. And this is a very good encouragement, because actually when you're trying always to not be in the background, then you don't allow other people to shine next to you. And that's a great learning that is happening. And I think that this is it's there in the dancing. You know, when you come to a space to jam and dance with others, if you're stuck in the mindset that you're an individual, you're going through your own journey in world, and you're just here to elevate yourself, you're very quickly, nobody wants to dance with you. You're not a fun partner. And I think that you're also not a fun boss if you constantly wants to dominate everybody with your opinions. So I have a certain, I have certain red lines or certain things that say, look, that's the spirit of the business. That's what we are aiming for. And I think that's also super crucial. If you have no vision and no values, you're a bit like, you're too much like a leaf in the wind. You have no direction. But at the same time, if you're like a bullet and you are not able to move left and right, you might miss a lot of important voices. So, and that's a question. I think that always needs certain amount of attention and a certain amount of calibration. Like, okay, am I listening enough, or am I speaking enough? Also, and that's also something kind of I'm also learning through holding a podcast. So I also have my own show where I practice listening. So like to actively make the choices to practice both listening and speaking physically, but also mentally, energetically. Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge and the biggest learning.
I want to distinguish a few things that you said in your story, and then I want to ask you about what you find important in your role as a leader. But you haven't been a leader in the beginning, right? You went into the military and you said certain naivetes were taken away from you, or like you let go of in that part, right? So when I listen to your story, I hear a bit of the individual going through its journey of being dramatically challenged in different ways to then relinquish control at the end to just listen what is wanted and needed by, you could say, the world or your students or people around you, and just really, I have a word tattooed on my arm, and it's devotion. I hear somebody being devoted, and oftentimes when I hear people speak about leadership, it sounds more like I tell you where to go and what to do, rather than I'm devoted to you winning. I'm devoted to you getting what you want out of life. I'm devoted to you having what it is you really want to have. And that's a bit the journey that I see when I listen to you. So from that perspective, if you think about some of the experiences along the way, like the military, then working in tech, then going from tech to dance, like what are some of the core lessons you think are helping you today in running the business?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I had like some examples of very bad leaders. And I think that's like something very good to pay attention, that when you come across somebody that you think, okay, they are doing something horrible, very often, and that's a bit of a cliche, but like we are being triggered by things that we have the same capacity of behavior. So I've seen like some bad examples of bosses, or in the army commanders, or in the dance world choreographers, etc. And like I remember that in the tech industry there was one guy who kept on taking responsibility for every successful act of his team. So if the team would do something good, he would say like, yeah, I made this happen. But if some of his team member will fuck up something, he will just say, yeah, this person, he just did a big mistake. I will make sure that he doesn't do it again. So like, instead of like taking responsibility over the failures of your employees, you're pointing the fault to them, and you're taking the success whenever, even if it's not yours. So I think like there's a certain, this is a principle that you should reverse as a leader. You should always take responsibility for the failures of others, or like that you're managing, because that's within your responsibilities to make sure at the end that something is happening. And you should always elevate those who are working good next to you, because at the end, if everybody next to you is wonderful, there is a higher chance that what you will do become wonderful. And that's a bit of maybe a trap of the ego to think that you need to elevate yourself. And I would say that like there was certain similar things happening to me during my military service. I think that the military service really taught me the value of freedom and different ways you can understand freedom. Because in the army, obviously, your body is the property of the army. Like if you go on the weekend to the beach and your sun and you burn your skin from the sun, you can go to jail because you damage the property of the army. That's the legal framework in which you're existing. So it's quite radical. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you don't have any personal freedom, and that's very. And then you need to discover a different type of freedom. And I think that it also helped me to understand that in order for people to really flourish in their responsibilities, they need to be able to have certain amount of freedom. Otherwise, it's very, very, very frustrating. It also taught me that not everyone is interested in leading. No, and so, for example, in my school, I have different teachers. Some of them are only interested in leading their classes, but they are not interested in being involved in other things. And then for such people, you need to be very clear in your instruction, in your expectation, and you need to create really easy funnels for them to arrive to where they can excel. But you always need to recognize what is the space where they can excel, and how can you give enough freedom for people to take to own the responsibility that you want to give them. So this is definitely something that was very present during those days. And I think that another thing is also ingrained a little bit in the job itself that I do, because there's different types of businesses you can build. Mine is based on a very clear relationship with the customers, that we are offering people yearly education about dance, movement, and embodiment. So our product, so to speak, is a learning experience. So I'm also working as a teacher. And a teacher, it's very obvious that on one hand, you're leading the space, but it's really not about you. It's about elevating others. I mean, if you don't understand that as a teacher, you're in the wrong profession, in my opinion, because that's the obvious thing. You're there to elevate others. So in a way, I could really extrapolate those principles from being a teacher to also being a boss. Okay, I'm not there to just exploit the talents of my employee in order to make a profit, which that would be like a very cynical look on, on every entrepreneurial endeavor. I'm there to create space in which the talents of my employees could be manifested in the best way possible. Now, am I getting into this optimal place? Probably not, but that's the destination. So I think that like having those experiences in the army and seeing the relation to freedom, and then like seeing different ways of management in the tech industry, and then like looking at these principles that are happening very obviously when you're teaching, that are definitely like kind of guiding me in how to manage and lead people. And I think that one thing that is also maybe super crucial, and I'm learning it sometimes the hard way, sometimes not, but like to really own your failures. Like every time I do something that is not working well, to apologize and to be very real about it. I'll just give you a quick example. Like this year, I wanted to find a new member for the team, and I wanted to find somebody that will take a responsibility that is quite big on one of our most important programs. So, and I decided to do an open call publicly to publish like, hey, the Movement Lab is searching for a new teacher. But I didn't post it first to my team. So the people who work with me, they suddenly see on Facebook, hey, the Movement Lab is searching for a team. What's going on? So they felt very confused, many of them. And then my admin manager told me, hey, Matan, yeah, it's actually a bit like insensitive, because like you can say, hey, like there's a new position that is not relevant for anybody in the team, but at least make them know that they don't hear it kind of like by chance. And I realized, yeah, it was true. I was quite acting too fast. That's another character. That's another aspect of my personality. I have a vision and I immediately go and do it. And sometimes I need to hold the brakes. And then I just send a message to everybody, hey guys, I'm really sorry. I fucked it up. It wasn't the right way to do it. I should have informed every one of you that you can feel what is happening and that you can feel that you're part of the Movement Lab, and you don't just learn about things kind of by chance. And everybody, appreciated that honesty. And I think this is like, if you try to shy away from moments like this, you're breaking the trust. And without trust, if people cannot trust you, you cannot trust them, and vice versa. So without trust, there is nothing that could be done. When you talk about teamwork, maybe you can do like kind of a solo business, maybe, but if you want to build a team, if you want to have people around you, trust is paramount.
Yeah, and it will require you undressing yourself, and that's, I think, what many people get a bit afraid of, and our mind loves to create horror stories about how people are going to respond to us when we share that we had a failure. At least that's my experience. I can very much relate to what you just shared. Like this Monday or Tuesday, I had a meeting with my team, and I just laid financials out because I had made some decisions that didn't turn out the way I said they would, and then I had to own that. And I love what you spoke about responsibility of a leader, is being responsible for all of it, being responsible for the failures and the wins, but the wins are also responsibility of your team. And if you lead by example in owning your failures, you also allow others to own a failure. And when we own something, we have the possibility to be with it and learn from it. At least that's my experience of not pushing it aside. When you push something aside, you never really integrate it. You never really embody it as an experience. It's very hard to learn from that space.
Yeah, and it's probably also not separable from like it's not separable from, I would say, like a certain life philosophy, and maybe that's something that for me, like I see my life on planet Earth as like as a journey of learning. And I think that's also like something that my wife shares with me. So that's why we kind of got together. Despite our differences, we are interested in learning. And I think that if you see life as a problem that needs to be solved rather than a journey to be experienced, so then maybe you don't want to address the uncomfortable stuff because it's not comfortable. You just want to make things work. But I think that if you see life to some extent as a experience that needs, as a journey that needs to be experienced, that there's a lot of learning there, then the undressing, I pick this word that you share, is actually the most interesting moments. I don't know. I mean, you remember when we had this little chat about the podcast, I shared with you some of my insecurities, and that led you for sharing yours. And suddenly it's like, yeah, it's so cool. Now we can be real with one another. And I think that maybe there's a certain facade in the business world that, I also worked as a dancer, and as a dancer, when you interpret other people's work, you always need to put yourself in very vulnerable situation. You need to try things that you don't feel comfortable trying, and you need to always expose new aspect of yourself. And I think that something about this exposure, maybe sometimes in a more, let's say, business heavy setting, you just want to, how this sentence goes, fake it until you make it. You want to create the image of success. And there is maybe some truth in that as a principle, or kind of maybe internally, hey, you want to believe in yourself. So just believe in yourself and it will work. But on a way of behaving, I think like we don't, like, faking things is not a good recipe for success. If you include success, not only on a financial level, but like the overall impact that you have on your life and the life of the people you care, because it's more complex than just having a good return on investment and just having a good financial budgets at the end and earning money. That's at least, where I come into this world of business. So, and I think you also share those ideas, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's the fake it till you make it. I don't really think it works. I think you can have a breakthrough in understanding where you realize that whatever story you told yourself about not being good enough or not being there yet can fall away, and you can just own the incredible potential of being human and then own that fact about yourself. But what I don't see working is pretending to have done things that you haven't, or be somewhere where you aren't. And I see that like in the world of content creation, which I'm engaging myself in more and more, where I think one of the things that help my content to at least speak to the people that I want to speak to, I don't have a big following or like huge engagement on my content. And there are people that then are my customers who are reading this, and they always say, like, I really relate to this. It's really so helpful to see how things are not working and what worked. And I think one of the principles I try to stay true there is to talk about things that I actually experience instead of faking it until I'm making it. And it's a different story from there to being, I call it to and it's not my words, but I'm borrowing those from Werner Erhard, who I was or am still very inspired by. He said, like, to declare things. To declare something is saying something will be. I think that holds a lot of power, but it only holds power when in the rest of your life you also are true to your word. And being true to your word is actually doing the things and owning the things that you have done, even when you didn't do what you said you would, going back and cleaning it up, and then declaring something. Like when you now say to your team, like, hey, we will create something new there, it holds a certain power that will align people to go in that direction. I think that's very different from faking it until you make it.
Yeah, totally. I think like it's as you say, like there is a difference between like breaking invisible limitation and being true to what you already experienced. And I think that like at the end, there is no substitute for experience. You can have a lot of knowledge and you can acquire a lot of tools, but you have to filter it through experience. So I would say like that in dance, it's kind of very obvious because like you teach people things that need to be embodied. So the learning is happening directly through spending time with the ideas and the concept and experimenting with them physically. So it becomes very clear that learning is not separated from experience. And we might have the illusion that I can go and study something in the university and now I know something, but it's quite obvious that it's not real. No, like even in jobs that are really hands-on. For example, my wife, she's a dentist. Part of her education was treating people. So actually like training in the job that she would actually do. But still, she finished the education and she's not fully a dentist yet. She needs to go and open a clinic and confront with like, how does it work to be able to balance the prices of the medical things that she needs to buy and the cash flow of the clinic. Like, there are so many things that are not connected to actual dentistry that are part of being a dentist. So I think like, again, experience is so powerful and meaningful. So, and in that regard, maybe I did it a bit, I reverse engineered the process. I didn't know anything about business making and I'm learning by doing. And now I became more and more curious to read books and connect to theory and things like that, which is also a possible way of doing things in the world. But again, like experience has to, like information by itself is, that's the layer that we might say like connects to fake it until you make it. Okay, you get some ideas and then you're like, okay, I'm just going to pretend that but you have to go through you have to walk the walk,
Yeah. Matan, one last question. When somebody is listening and they're looking to expand their business, they might have been a solopreneur, playing a bit around or already made it to a certain level where they can sustain themselves, but are now thinking about building a team, building a bigger vision for maybe not only for themselves, but also for other people to have some space in it. What's the number one advice you would give someone in that position?
That's a very interesting question. I think that as a principle, I would encourage everyone who's listening to first pay attention. What is your default way of making decisions? Are you a hypercognitive person or you're really like a gut feeling person? And I really believe in integration. So I think like it's really good to first recognize what's your habit. Maybe you are already integrated person and you can do these things, but to have a layer of rationality for your decision making, that's super important. But at the same time, don't exclude those systems that listen through a different way, because there are only you have a limited capacity to rationalize all the things that could be rationalized. So it's very important to have the ability to listen to these different cues around you. And these are the cues that will guide you to some extent. And that's will be maybe part of my belief system, that those cues that are not rational would lead you to situation that there is more learning for you more learning to take place. So maybe again, like maybe the rational side will tell you, hey, this is a mistake, but there is something that tells you, I need to do that decision. There is some learning there. And at the same time, not to completely abolish rationality, because you can drive into a wall if you're just like taking all the time gut feeling decision. And so I would say like this is like a good starting point to recognize from where you take decisions. And then I would say like think about certain amount of people who compliment you and who are the people that you feel like, there is something about them that will keep challenging me. And you really want to have both of these type of people around you, because again, if you have only people who will compliment you and will tell you how great you are, you will not be able to see the things that you cannot see. But on the other hand, if you're constantly confronted and questions all the time, that also creates a certain heaviness. And different people need different degrees of that. But I think that ultimately you have to have these two elements. So one that is kind of strengthening you and one that is kind of questioning you. And that will definitely make your business more robust because you have different ways of viewing things, more perspectives. And more perspectives, I wouldn't say that it's always more powerful, but in 90% of the cases, you want to have more than less perspectives.
Yeah. Man, I took a lot from listening to you today, like truly, and getting inspiration for the journey that we are on. And I could see so many similarities in what you shared, what your experience was, the principles you fell into, like sharing this background from going from movement into a business, and then seeing certain principles at play of the principle of resistance, and what you persist resists, or what you resist persists. That's the way it goes, right? I loved all that you shared. I hope this is going to be useful for the people listening. We are bringing this to a community of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small business owners who are on this journey together. And if people are really intrigued by what they just listened to, or they want to find out a bit more about what you do and where they can find some of your articles and inspirations, where best to go for somebody?
Yeah, so I would say like the main thing that I do nowadays has around what my business, the Movement Lab. So you can visit our website, movementlab.eu, where you can get in touch with my podcast that is called Material for the Brain, which I have the intuition that Moritz will be a future guest on this podcast. and there's also like an article section, and we also have some online courses on different topics of embodiment and movement that you can have direct experience of the teachings we do. And we are actually also holding an open day very soon on the 13th of June. So if you live in Vienna and the vicinity and you want to get in touch with your body and explore movement in a very supportive environment, you can come and sign up for that. And if you're interested in more like choreographic work and dance work, you can also visit my individual website that is called matanlevkowich.com. And on my social media, I share some personal stories and content, not that active. So I would say like the website is the best way to get in touch. But again, if you're curious to write me in person, you can either drop me an email through the website or just go to my social media, which is my name, Instagram and Facebook, and drop me a message. And I'm always happy to get in touch with people who are interested in my work. Maybe sometimes I don't respond that quickly, but if you write me, I will be there to respond at a certain point. And I'm happy to get to know new people and see how what I do can help support others. So yeah, and thank you, Moritz, for the opportunity to be featured here and to share my work. So I really appreciate that invitation.
Thank you, Matan. I really, really did appreciate it. And I want to acknowledge you for all that you are creating and the trust you place in life and people. I think that's admirable in a leader. To wrap it up, this was hosted by the Art of Living Academy, Creating Games Worth Playing, a podcast, episode with Matan Levkowich, where I'm yet to think what we're going to name it. Do you have any idea what you would give it as a name based on what we shared about?
If I have an idea, or how to call it, I would have to. I would have to think about it.
Let's connect on that. If any ideas are coming, and otherwise, you're going to see this in our YouTube channel. If you want to check out any of the other work, you find us also on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, under my name, Moritz Lambert. And I'm looking forward to see you in the next episode.